Raynell, Child of the King. Written by Nadeen Petersen. Narrated by Andrea Rosignol. Part 1. Raynell's Freedom. Chapter 1. The True Words. In a kingdom far away, there lived an orphan slave named Raynell, who had deep longings. In the most secret place of her heart, Raynell desired to be loved. But in this land, Raynell was a slave with a very large debt. Every day, she walked in mud with heavy chains locked around her wrists and ankles. A fearful master named Dark Voice ruled her life. A great sadness filled Raynell's heart as Dark Voice spoke harshly to her day after day.
"Nobody would ever love a slave,"
he would say. Raynell tried to find love by joining the games the other slaves played. But the games were cruel. If she lost, she would be teased and kicked. If she won, she had to tease and kick the other slaves while laughing at them. One day, after winning a game and being cruel, Raynell's laughter felt very empty. She knew she was being unkind, and she wondered if she had a bad heart. Raynell turned away from the other slaves and went on a lonely walk. Her chains were heavy and cut into her wrists and ankles as she trudged through the mud. "My heart feels so bad and heavy," she said to herself. "I could never be loved with such a heart." As Raynell neared the border of her slavery, she noticed an old man leaning an elbow on a broken fence.
"Hello, child,"
he said. He had sparkly blue eyes and a fuzzy white beard. On his head, he wore a fine gold crown. "Hello to you," Raynell said. "Who are you?"
"My name is Wesley, and there is something I'd like to tell you."
Raynell's chains made a clanging noise as she walked nearer to him. "My name is Raynell," she said. She noticed he had no chains. "What do you want to tell me?"
"I want to tell you the true words,"
he said. The true words? She wondered. Raynell had never heard of them, but a shiver of excitement tingled through her. "What are the true words?" she asked as she sat down on a large rock near the broken fence. Wesley smiled.
"They are words that will change your life, if you believe them."
Raynell looked around at the mud of her slavery. "My life cannot change. I'm a slave. How could words change that?"
"The true words are powerful,"
he said. Raynell wanted to hear more. She had never talked to anyone who had no chains. But she feared it was not a good idea to talk to someone who was free. Dark Voice would hate it. She wondered if he was listening behind some tree. "I better go." Raynell stood to her feet. "I do not know if I should listen to the true words, even though they sound very nice." Wesley sighed but nodded.
"Nevertheless, I will come back tomorrow, and if you want to hear more true words, I promise I will share them."
Chapter 2. The Good King. When Raynell woke the next morning, her wrists and ankles were throbbing in pain. Her chains were cutting deeper every day. Raynell went through her day with a heavy heart. She felt so alone, and each step was painful. At last, when the sun was beginning to dip low into the sky, she decided to walk to the broken fence in hopes that Wesley would be there. He was, and as Raynell sat upon the big rock, her chains scraped across its hard surface. Wesley walked near and looked at the red sores around her wrists and ankles.
"Are your chains painful?"
he asked. "Yes," she said. "They are heavy and cut deeply." Raynell turned her wrists and showed Wesley her raw skin. The chains were leaving scars.
Why do you stay here in the mud, Raynell?
He asked. She sighed and fingered the cold metal locks. I have a very large debt. There is not enough money in the world to pay for my freedom. So I am a slave. A gentle breeze blew over Wesley's fuzzy white beard.
Raynell.
Wesley looked at her.
Did you know there is a good king in this land?
No. Raynell shook her head. I thought Dark Voice was the ruler over this land. Wesley looked to the east.
Not far from here. There's a beautiful palace where the king and his son live. In that kingly hall live many children that the king has adopted. I have come to tell you the true words about this king and his son.
The true words feel like warm honey poured over my shoulders, Raynell thought. I wonder what a good king would be like. For a moment she forgot about her pain. Raynell looked up at Wesley's crown. You must be someone who works for the king.
I do his work, but I am a child of the king,
he said with a twinkle in his eye. But, exclaimed Raynell, you are so old. Wesley laughed out loud.
Well, he said, I was adopted years ago when I was a little boy.
Raynell thought about that. Then the king must be very old, she said with wonder. Wesley raised his eyebrows.
He is older than the great mountains across the mighty river.
I have never seen the mountains or the river, Raynell said. The king is older than I can imagine.
Yes, Wesley answered as he leaned in close. But if you look into his eyes, you would see he is as young and strong as a victorious lion.
Oh! Raynell thought she would like to look into eyes like that, into the eyes of this good king. But then she remembered how muddy she was. He would find her very dirty. Somehow, Raynell knew he would not like her bad heart at all. Chapter 3. The Most Precious Thing. Wesley asked Raynell,
Why do you look so sad?
I was just thinking, she said. I would like to see the eyes of the good king, but he would not like to see me at all. Raynell shook her head.
Tell me, said Wesley. Why do you think he would not like you?
Raynell took a deep breath. Wesley was very kind to her. She wanted to tell him about her bad heart. I am very dirty, as you can see, because I am a slave. But sometimes I play in the mud, and then I'm cruel to the other slaves. I think my heart must be very bad. I'm sure the king, if he is good, would not like it. Once again a breeze blew upon Wesley's fuzzy white beard.
Do you know what I see in your heart?
He asked. What? Raynell looked at him fully.
A longing to be loved,
he said with tenderness. These words were not what Raynell expected, and they brought tears to her eyes. How did you know that? She asked quietly.
I have learned many things from living in the king's palace, he said. I have learned that all hearts long to be loved.
Raynell felt like her bad heart got softer when she heard these words. The sun was setting, and Raynell knew she must leave. Thank you, Wesley, she said. And though she didn't smile, Wesley could see that her eyes looked a tiny bit less sad. Dark Voice found Raynell early the next morning.
Look at you,
he hissed.
You are the dirtiest slave I have ever seen.
Raynell looked down and saw she was almost up to her knees in mud. I know, was all she could say.
Oh,
he mocked.
And you long to be loved. Too bad you are so dirty. Too bad no one will ever love you. You will always be a slave. So worthless."
Dark Voice walked away, leaving Raynell alone in the mud. But his awful words seemed to push her lower and lower all day. Late in the afternoon, Raynell tried to leave a certain mud pit. She lifted her foot, but the mud would not let her go. Finally, she had to get on her hands and knees and roll out of the slimy mess. Raynell had never been so dirty. She looked down to see that even her fingernails were black and grimy. As she stood there, with the mud drying on her clothes and legs, Raynell remembered the harsh words of Dark Voice that morning. The sadness filled her heart, and she found it was even difficult to breathe. Maybe Wesley will be by the big rock again this evening, Raynell hoped. There was something about the true words that made her want to hear more. Raynell turned in the direction of the broken fence and walked as quickly as she could. She began to wonder if her dirtiness would make Wesley walk away from her. But when Wesley saw Raynell walking toward him, he quickly came around the fence.
"I'm so glad you came. I want to show you something."
Raynell followed him past the broken fence and through a grove of trees. The mud caked around her knees made her walk slowly. Just beyond the trees, she could see hills upon hills, golden and green in the setting sun. Raynell looked over her shoulder to see if Dark Voice was near. She didn't want him to see how close she was to the edge of her slavery. How she feared his voice.
"There,"
Wesley pointed.
"Over those hills is the palace of the king and his son."
Then he looked at Raynell.
"I have come to tell you that the king wants to adopt you, Raynell, as his own daughter."
Raynell's eyes grew big at his words. She looked at Wesley, and then looked at the hills. "Why would he want me?" Raynell looked at her feet. "You know what I am. A dirty, mean slave. The king doesn't want me to be his child. You are wrong, or mistaken."
"There is no mistake,"
Wesley said solemnly.
"He loves you."
"Loves me?" Raynell's heart burned with hope. How she longed for these words to be true. Could he love someone like me?
"Yes,"
said Wesley.
"These are the true words. You can believe them."
Was it possible to be loved by this good king? And adopted by him? My own papa? Raynell lifted her hand to cup her eyes as she looked to the hills. Her heavy chains cut into her wrist. Their heaviness made her growing hopes sink away. The chains made her remember who she was. "I'm a slave," she cried. Raynell stretched out her hands to Wesley. "I am not free to leave, not free to choose such a good life. I am a slave to my debt. No one can pay it. I'll always be a slave." Raynell looked away from the hills and turned toward the mud of her slavery. "This longing I have to be loved makes my heart hurt," she thought, and pressed her hand over the spot. Her heavy heart was more than she could bear, and she fell to her knees. A gentle wind blew upon Wesley as he watched Raynell kneeling in the mud of slavery. Wesley, in his clean white clothes, went down on one knee beside her. "Don't!" she sobbed. "You will get dirty."
"Raynell,"
Wesley said urgently.
"there are more true words for you to hear."
Raynell's head was down, and her hand was still upon her heart. "Then say them quickly." She sniffed back her tears. "To hear the words and not be free to go is more than I can bear." Wesley said to her,
"Little Raynell, you are free to leave this slavery. The king has paid your debt."
What did you say? Raynell asked, then held her breath.
You no longer need to be a slave, Wesley said. You are free to be the king's daughter. Your debt is paid.
Raynell longed to believe him. She looked up. How did the king pay for my freedom? Even he cannot be rich enough. With his arms crossed over his knee, Wesley looked very solemn as he told her.
It was paid with the most precious thing in the world.
Raynell sat very still and quiet. Wesley, the most precious thing in the world is life. Someone would have to die to pay my debt that way. Wesley nodded his head and looked at her with comfort in his eyes.
It is as you say.
Chapter 4. Wesley Laughs. Raynell could not look at Wesley. She would not. Surely he is lying. Nobody would die for my freedom. I will not believe such love. Wesley leaned down to Raynell. He lifted her chin with his gentle old hand.
The king's son, the prince, died to pay your debt.
His son? The prince?
Yes,
answered Wesley.
And now you are free to leave this slavery. You are free to be adopted.
Raynell felt the heaviness in her heart press on her. She closed her eyes. She wanted to believe these true words. She wanted to be loved by the good king. But Raynell was ashamed to think of the prince, who gave his life for her. Wesley, Raynell asked, did the king's son have eyes like his father?
Yes,
he answered firmly.
Eyes like a victorious lion.
Raynell covered her muddy face and began to weep. She felt the mud under her fingernails and between her toes. Her clothes were smeared, and her chains were heavy. She knew the red sores from her chains were forming scars, ugly scars from her years of slavery. Oh, why did the king's son do such a wonderful good thing to someone like me? She thought.
Raynell.
Wesley's voice was gentle. He seemed to understand her tears.
Because of the true words, you are seeing yourself for the first time. But you see yourself as a slave. It's time you saw yourself as the king sees you.
Oh, no. She shook her head. I'm afraid for the king to see me.
There is no fear where there is love, he said. He sees you as the beautiful child he wants to adopt as his very own daughter. No longer a slave, but the daughter of a king.
But isn't the king sad? She asked.
Why?
Asked Wesley. Well, stammered Raynell, if it wasn't for me, his son would be alive. The king would think of his death when he looks at me. Wesley tipped his head back and laughed a great, resounding laugh that filled the air around them. It wasn't empty like Raynell had heard all her life. It was joyful. It was triumphant. What does this laugh mean? She wondered. Wesley stopped laughing and almost shouted.
The prince was only dead for 3 days.
Wesley's eyes sparkled.
Then he came back to life. The son is alive and is waiting for you to be adopted by his father.
The true words shot through the shame in Raynell's heart. The heaviness fell out, and she jumped up to her feet. And with the first smile she ever smiled, Raynell plainly said, I believe you. Immediately, her chains fell off and sank into the mud. Raynell's heart grew so light she thought she could fly. I'm free, she cried. Wesley, I'm free. Raynell showed him her wrists, where the chains used to be. Together they twirled and laughed. "The king's son is alive!" Raynell laughed and lifted her arms to the sky. "Now I will go to the king's palace. I can be adopted. I can be loved." In the golden sunset, a beautiful spring rain began to fall upon Raynell. She lifted her face to it and let the raindrops wash away the mud of her slavery. Raynell held up her wrists where the chains had been and allowed the water drops to run over her sores and her scars. When Wesley saw the rain, he said to himself, "The king's son has provided it." When the rain stopped, Raynell noticed that her heart no longer felt bad, but clean. She looked at her wrists. The sores were healed, and the pain was gone. "It seems these true words really will change my life," she thought. "I don't want to stay here anymore." Raynell gazed at the hills. "I want to look into the king's eyes and see the son who paid for my freedom, the one who died but is now alive." Without her chains, Raynell felt as light as a bird. She began to run over the golden green hills. She was surprised to see that Wesley was keeping up, even though he was an old man. When she looked down to watch his running feet, she noticed how beautiful they were. As she came over a hill, Raynell saw the palace of the king, gleaming with white marble. She stopped running, for a great longing filled her heart to see the king who wanted to adopt her. She could hear her own heart beating loudly as she looked for the face of the king. Then she saw him. The king was standing at the gate, looking, watching, waiting. Was it for her? Raynell saw that his face was good and strong, and that his eyes were searching the hills. "It is the king," she said breathlessly. Wesley stood aside to watch a joyful meeting take place. All at once the king turned and saw her. He began to run. He ran to Raynell with his laughter ringing over the hills. When he came near, the good king lifted her into the air and swung her in a circle. "Raynell, my daughter, you are home at last." "He knows my name," Raynell thought with wonder. As she twirled in the air, she giggled from dizziness. "I am home, good king." The king put Raynell down and smiled. He bent forward and put his hands on his knees. "You are my daughter now, a child of the king." It was then that Raynell looked at the king fully in the eyes. Yes, they were eyes like a victorious lion. But she felt no fear, for she saw love, real love. Raynell's heart exploded into a burst of joy. "Papa!" she exclaimed as her arms flew around his neck. The good king held her head to his shoulder. His hand was upon her hair. "You are free at last, little daughter. I am your papa now. You belong to me, and you are loved." Part 2. Raynell's Crown. Chapter 5. A Soft, Soft Bed. The king held Raynell's hand as he led her to the palace. "Papa," she asked, "where is your son who died for my freedom, the one who paid my debt with his life?" The king pointed to a lovely tree growing in the middle of the path to the palace. "Under that tree, the prince is playing with the littlest children." Raynell saw the son of the king on his knees, as 3 children crawled on his back. They were trying to tickle him under his ribs. "Not fair!" He was teasing with laughter. Raynell smiled. He was very much alive, she thought. Raynell stepped under the shade of the tree and felt the coolness of its silvery leaves and smelled its minty freshness. Her papa put his hands on her shoulders and stepped behind her. When the prince saw Raynell standing with his father, he came to his feet. He was somehow able to hold all 3 children with strength and gentleness.
"Welcome home, little sister," he said with a smile. "I am your brother. I am Joa."
Raynell opened her mouth to thank him for paying for her freedom, but his eyes made her forget everything around her. His eyes were like a mighty warrior, like a victorious lion. Yet he was so gentle with the littlest children. He came nearer to her, and the children slipped off his back.
"Your slavery was long and difficult."
He reached out to Raynell, and she willingly gave him both her hands. His thumbs touched her scars where her chains had cut. She quickly looked up and asked, "Will I always have scars?"
"Only as a memory," he said. "But your pain is gone forever."
Raynell looked down at his great hands and wrists. "Your wrists are very scarred as well. It's as if heavy chains of slavery had cut him too," she thought. As he gently held Raynell's hands, he took a deep breath and sighed.
"Yes, but it is finished,"
he said, and then smiled. "Thank you for paying my debt, so I could be free to be adopted," Raynell said with all her heart. "Thank you, Joa." The littlest children cried gleefully, "It is finished!" Then they reached up and wrapped their fingers around Raynell's thumbs and pulled her toward the palace doors. "Come, Thithter, show ya, palace." She thought they were very sweet, and noticed they each wore a crown. "You all have such beautiful crowns," Raynell said. "Yeth," they answered. "Thithter crown too, Thun." Her papa and Joa walked behind her, covering their own laughter with their hands. The excitement of the littlest children was a happy sight to see. The palace doors glided open as they came near. It seemed to be larger inside than outside. Music flowed out and filled Raynell's ears. She heard flutes, guitars, and a wooden drum that made her feet want to dance. On either side of the entrance hall were people of all ages. Every smile seemed to say, "Welcome home."
"These are your new brothers and sisters,"
the king's booming voice told her.
"Very soon we will have a feast to celebrate your homecoming. And then—"
He paused, and warmth came into his eyes.
"Then, in the morning, I will give you your crown."
Raynell felt warm and safe. She finally had a home where she belonged. An older girl named Cora came to them. "All right, children, I will show your sister to her room now." The littlest children ran off, giggling and looking over their shoulders as they left her side. Cora kindly led Raynell up a marble stairway to her very own bedroom. As they walked into the room, Raynell saw a white iron bed that twisted into what looked like vines, leaves, and buttercups. The bed was covered with piles of feathery, soft blankets. It seemed to be waiting for her to jump on it. Cora looked at Raynell and winked. "Go ahead," she said. "See how soft it is." Raynell took 3 running steps and flew through the air. She landed on her back, almost covered in the feathery blankets. "I've never felt such a bed," she exclaimed. She sat up, holding one of the soft pillows close. In the corner, she saw a wardrobe with carved words on its panels. Cora opened it and showed her what was inside. "Oh," Raynell breathed. There, hanging easily for her to reach, were the prettiest clothes she had ever seen. "These are so clean," Raynell said, running her hands over the silky white gowns. They were like clouds, layer upon layer of shimmering whiteness. "Look," she exclaimed. "When the light glimmers upon them, I see blue, green, and silver. It's like a bubble in soapy water." "The king has provided them," Cora said. "You are clean from the mud of your slavery. Wear these gowns with joy." Cora's eyes sparkled as she encouraged Raynell to try one on. When Raynell put on her clean, new gown, she twirled near her soft, soft bed. "It fits me perfectly," she said with excitement. Chapter 6. Messenger's Voice. "Come," beckoned Cora. "It's time for the celebration." Quickly, they went down the marble stairs. As they came upon the threshold of a large dining hall, Raynell saw a wondrous sight. All around glimmered gold and silver in the candlelight. Diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and pearls twinkled before her eyes like stars in the sky. "It is their crowns," she whispered. "This is a sight I will never forget." Cora stood beside Raynell, the tiny jewels in her crown dancing colors on the wall around them. "Raynell," she said, "there is someone you need to meet. He was very near when Wesley told you about the king and his son. You did not see him, but you may have felt his breeze blow upon you." "Yes," said Raynell. "I remember the breeze blowing. Who is it? I didn't see anyone but Wesley." "His name is Messenger. He is the one who makes the true words find a place in your heart. Even though you can't always see him, the wind blows when he is near," said Cora. Then, though they were inside the palace, Raynell felt a gentle breeze lift the ends of her auburn hair. A man stepped near, who had a bag of scrolls slung over his shoulder. He wore traveling clothes with many pockets. His eyes looked familiar to Raynell, yet she had never met him. "This is Messenger," said Cora. "He will always come when you call, and he carries the true words." Raynell turned to Messenger's comforting smile. "In the mud of my slavery, I felt your breeze. Wesley told me the true words you carry," Raynell said quietly. "Yes," said Messenger, "and there are many more true words that I will teach you, little daughter." Raynell liked Messenger's voice very much. "Oh, I think I could sit and listen to your voice for hours," exclaimed Raynell. Messenger laughed, and the warmth of his voice vibrated deep into Raynell's heart. Music from the dining hall pulled their attention. The celebration had begun. It was the kind of gathering Raynell had always longed for. There was singing and storytelling and games. Raynell sipped spicy apple cider and laughed with the littlest children. All her brothers and sisters rejoiced that she was freed from slavery and adopted by the king. "This is my family," she thought. It was wonderful to belong. When Raynell yawned, Cora smiled. "Come, it's time to rest." And she helped Raynell walk up the marble staircase to her soft, soft bed. Cora left Raynell lying on her wonderful bed, the feathery blankets pulled up to her chin. She could see the stars twinkling out her window. It made her think of all the glittering crowns her brothers and sisters wore. She whispered to herself, I live in the palace of a good king. I will never be a slave again. And tomorrow I will be given my crown. Chapter 7. In the Garden of the King. Raynell awoke with someone singing below her window. It was very early, but she felt refreshed and rested. She walked in her bare feet and peeked over the window's edge. Who could it be that sings so beautifully? She wondered. Raynell's green eyes blinked as she saw a messenger in a garden of stone and flowers. He was lifting up his voice across the crisp morning air, causing Raynell to want to run down and join him. Maybe he will teach me more true words, she said with longing. Raynell dressed quickly in a new white gown. She began to hum the song Messenger was singing as she hurried down to see him. The stone garden was very old, with many hidden paths. There was an early morning mist resting on each flower, and Raynell felt her feet get wet with dew. The air smelled fresh, and it seemed that each rose and lily were beckoning Raynell to look upon it. But Messenger's voice was more beautiful than the flowers, and it drew her to him. Raynell peeked around a hedge and listened to the last words of Messenger's song. He sings of something precious, and of a glittering crown, she thought. Then he turned and saw Raynell. He said to her, "It is time." Raynell went willingly with him as he led her to the center of the garden. The flowers grew tall, and the stones made a rounded wall. There the king and his son were waiting. "Good morning, Papa. Good morning, Joa," she said breathlessly. "This is a special place."
"This is a special time," answered the king.
He was holding a wooden box that was round with golden hinges. "Is my crown inside?" she wondered. As she stepped closer, she looked up into her papa's eyes. They were warm with joy and love. Then he opened the box and lifted from it the most beautiful, delicate crown Raynell had ever seen. Tiny pearls and pastel gems enhanced the woven swirls of gold and silver. The true words her papa spoke filled Raynell with hope.
"Daughter, your crown is like you, precious and valuable. My children wear these crowns so they will never forget who they are. You are my precious child, a child of the king."
Raynell held her breath as the delicate crown was placed on her head. She closed her eyes in wonderment. But as her papa was about to speak again, Raynell remembered the words of Dark Voice. It was as if he were standing there in the garden whispering,
"You are the dirtiest slave I have ever seen. No one could ever love you. So worthless."
"Oh!" Raynell cried and almost fell to her knees. The three did not hear the words, but they saw their effect.
"Raynell."
Messenger caught her arm and held her steady.
"Can we help you, little daughter?"
Raynell was ashamed such bad words had come at this special time. "No, I'm fine." She smiled weakly. How can these words be in my head? I did not know I would remember them, Raynell thought sadly. But she only said, "Thank you for the crown, my king." The king noticed that she did not call him Papa. Joa looked at the king, hoping Raynell would ask for help. His eyes began to burn like a mighty warrior. Though the words were only in Raynell's head, the three saw she believed them. The true words could banish the old lies of Dark Voice. Messenger's eyes filled with tears, knowing how the evil words were hurting the daughter of the king. But Raynell did not look up. She did not look into the eyes of the king, the prince, or Messenger. She did not ask for help. The lies in her head were all she could think about. She was ashamed to look into the eyes of her papa. As Raynell turned away, the crown on her head felt strange. She was nervous one of her brothers and sisters would see it. She thought, I don't want to make anyone angry by wearing something I don't deserve. I should not wear this crown. Raynell ran up to her room, closed the door, and removed her crown. She placed it back in the wooden box and hid the box in her wardrobe. It did not make her feel better to hide it. But what else am I to do? She wondered. Chapter 8. Wandering. Raynell was nervous as she went down to breakfast. All her brothers and sisters were wearing their crowns. I must not wear mine, she whispered to herself. Soon she felt miserable. Why would the king give me a crown? Doesn't he know how dirty I was? The breakfast she tried to eat felt stuck in her throat. All morning, Raynell kept thinking of the words of Dark Voice.
You are a worthless slave. You are so dirty.
It hurt her heart to remember, but she couldn't seem to stop remembering. Cora saw Raynell standing against a wall in the shadows. Where is your crown? She asked. Didn't Messenger call you this morning and tell you it was time? Raynell answered, Yes, but I shouldn't wear something so precious. Cora's eyes widened. Why do you think that? She asked in surprise. Well, I was a dirty slave. Raynell felt all the shame again. I cannot wear something of such value. I'm worthless. Raynell dropped her head and didn't want Cora to look at her. Cora seemed upset. She leaned in close and whispered, Who told you that? Raynell remembered clearly when she was a slave, and Dark Voice said she was worthless. She was knee-deep in mud. She was cruel to the other slaves. And she was always dirty. I looked very worthless indeed. It was no wonder he said I was worthless, Raynell thought. Cora persisted. Who told you that you were worthless? Raynell told her. Someone who knew me very well. Before Cora could say more, Raynell ran out the palace doors with tears in her eyes. That day, Raynell started to wander. She knew she should stay close to the palace and her family. But when she saw their crowns, it made her want to hide. How could she belong to such a family? When the sun was high in the sky, Raynell was too far away to even see the palace. Her head was down, so she did not see where she was going. She kept thinking, the king shouldn't have given me something so precious. He does not know how dirty I really was. So worthless. It would not be right to wear a glittering crown upon my head. It was then that Raynell looked up and saw how far she had come. She was standing on the edge of her old life of slavery. The mud was very close to her feet. How did I get here? She asked aloud. I should have been thinking about the true words, but I can't remember them now. Just then, she heard empty laughter. Some of the slaves were playing their games. "Hey, Raynell!" one of them called. "Come play!" Raynell felt lonely. Should I? She thought. Would it hurt anything to just play a little? She almost took a step when she remembered the mud. "Are you coming?" he persisted. Raynell touched her clothes, so sparkling white. "I don't want to get dirty. There is so much mud, you know." "Mud?" The boy looked down at his very dirty feet. "No one ever cares about that." Raynell didn't really want to play in the mud. She just felt lonely, being so far from the palace. But as she turned toward home, she realized she couldn't take another step. Her feet felt heavy, and her heart was confused. "I wish I could go home," she thought. "But the children of the king all wear their crowns. I do not deserve to wear something so precious. What should I do? I do not want to be near this mud." Just then, Dark Voice walked by. "Oh, I hope he does not see me," she thought, as dread filled her heart. But he did see her. Chapter 9. Heavy Feet. Dark Voice came near and hissed,
"You belong here, not in a palace of a king."
Raynell looked longingly toward the palace. Dark Voice walked in a slow circle around Raynell, speaking his horrible words.
"If the king ever knew how dirty you used to be, it would bring shame on the king's family."
Raynell gasped. Was this true? She wanted to run away and hide, but these words made her feet feel even heavier. Dark Voice began to laugh. Raynell's legs trembled with fear. Her feet were too heavy to move her away from the horrible words of Dark Voice. But Raynell's fear also made her angry, and she said to Dark Voice, "You are not my master anymore. If I could remember some of the true words, maybe they would make my feet light, and I could run away from your laughter and your words." Dark Voice stopped laughing and looked scared. Raynell noticed. "I know what I must do," she realized. "Messenger!" she called out. "Messenger, help me, please. I need to remember the true words." Raynell felt choked with tears. Dark Voice saw the nearby trees bend in a sudden wind. He cowered and hid, for there stood Messenger at her side. At first, Raynell felt ashamed that she was so close to the mud of her slavery. But she chose to look into Messenger's eyes, and was thankful she did. His eyes were not angry, but gentle with love. "Help me, please," she said through her tears. "Come away from this mud, Raynell," Messenger said urgently. "Let me lead you back to the palace." "I can't. Dark Voice has said some terrible words to me." Raynell put her head down in shame. "And now my feet are too heavy to move." Messenger put his hand under her chin and drew her eyes up. "Child, didn't you know that Dark Voice speaks lies?" "Lies?" she said. No, Raynell did not know that. She looked around at her old life of slavery and told Messenger, "When I was a slave, Dark Voice would tell me I was dirty, that no one would ever love me, that I was worthless. I don't know if it was a lie because I was very dirty and cruel when I was a slave. I was worthless. Raynell began to cry. Messenger urgently said,
Raynell, you are not a slave, but the daughter of the king. Where is your crown?
She paused in shame. I hid it. When my papa placed the crown on my head, the words of Dark Voice came back to me. I could hear them in my head. Raynell stumbled as she remembered the awful words again, but Messenger caught her and kept her from falling into the mud. He helped Raynell to lean against a tree to rest. Then he pulled out a small scroll from his bag. As he unrolled it, he said, I will tell you the last thing the king said to you. Messenger's voice was warm as he read from the scroll. Daughter, your crown is like you, precious and valuable. My children wear these crowns so they never forget who they are. You are my precious child, a child of the king. Am I really precious to the king? Raynell asked. Even though I was a dirty slave? Are those true words, Messenger? Yes, Raynell, they are. Messenger replied with patience. But Raynell wondered if the king really knew how dirty she had been as a slave. A refreshing wind blew upon Raynell's face. You are precious to the king, answered Messenger, because he chose you, not because you are clean now. Raynell did not understand, but she was suddenly overwhelmed with a longing to look into the eyes of her papa. He had shown her such love. Why, oh why, could she not believe? It was then that Raynell realized how wrong she had been to wander. Oh, Papa, she whispered to herself. I'm so sorry, Papa. Chapter 10. Carried Home. Raynell tried to run home, but her heavy legs kept her from running in joy, and she could only walk, stumble, fall, and walk again. Messenger never left her side. As they came over the last hill, Raynell could see the palace in the distance, and Joah running to her. When he came near, he lifted her in his arms and carried her home. In his arms, Raynell felt warm and loved, but in his eyes, Raynell saw a fire. He is angry, thought Raynell, but somehow I know he is not angry with me. Raynell tightened her arms around his neck and clung to Joah. When they turned into the gate, Joah set her gently at the feet of the good king. In her papa's hands was her crown. The pearls and precious gems gleamed in the evening light. Raynell could not stop the tears from running down her face. She loved her dear papa so much. How she longed to please him now. Papa, she cried, I did not believe that I was worthy to wear my crown, so I hid it, and I wandered away. He did not rebuke her, but with great gentleness he placed her beautiful crown on her head. Then, with his hands on her shoulders, he said, Daughter. Raynell finally looked into his eyes. She was determined to believe what his strong voice said. You are not worthless, he said, but precious in my sight. As the daughter of the king, wear this crown, for I have chosen it for you, because it reminds me of you. Precious, so precious. Raynell confessed, It's hard to believe that I am precious, when I was such a dirty slave. The king's eyes glowed with a sweet memory. When I chose you to be my child, you became precious in my sight. Raynell thought of her life as a slave, so dirty and cruel. Then she asked in awe, "When did you choose me?" The king leaned in close to Raynell's face. "Before you knew me, before your chains fell off, before the rain washed away the mud, before you were a slave, before you were even born, I chose you." Raynell felt Messenger's breeze. The good king reached out to the tears on her face and gently swiped them away. He said, "So even when you were still dirty with mud, you were precious to me." The breeze became a wind, and Raynell felt the last of the lies from Dark Voice float away. "I think I believe you, Papa," she said. And as she continued to look into his eyes, his love gave her strength. She stood to her feet. "I do believe you, Papa." Messenger started to sing the song he sang the morning Raynell received her crown. "He sings of something precious," she thought. "I thought it was the crown." "But it's me," she whispered. Now Raynell was learning to believe it. "Come," said the king. "It is time you learn the song that Messenger sings over you." Part 3. Raynell's Beautiful Feet. Chapter 11. A Lone Figure. Living in the palace of the king was a happy, wondrous time. Raynell's days were filled with learning and exploring. Messenger was a gentle teacher, and Raynell was learning to believe every true word about the good king and his son, Joah. Sometimes, Raynell would climb the marble stairs to the highest balcony of the palace. It was her favorite place. The balcony faced the western lands where she could see shining, golden sunsets, reflecting on the great river and sinking behind the distant mountains. She could see lands beyond lands that she had never been to. She would wonder about them, even dream about them. Raynell noticed some of her brothers and sisters coming and going from the palace. She knew they were not wandering as she had done, for their heads were not down, nor did they look sad. They seemed to have a purpose, and knew where they were going. She was curious, but she never asked. She was just happy being the daughter of the king. One morning before breakfast, Raynell went up to her most favorite balcony. On the horizon, she saw a lone figure walking toward the palace. This person seemed familiar somehow. As he came near the gate, she noticed he was old and had a fuzzy white beard. Raynell's green eyes blinked in surprise, for she saw he had beautiful feet. "Wesley!" she called from her high place in the balcony. He looked up and waved with a smile. Quickly, Raynell ran down to meet him outside the palace doors.
"Little Raynell."
Wesley smiled when he saw her hurry out breathlessly.
"I see you still like to run."
Raynell laughed as she remembered the day she first believed the true words Wesley told her. They had run to the palace together, and she into her papa's arms. "Wesley, I didn't know where you went after I came to live in the palace of the king." Wesley sighed. He looked tired from walking.
"Let's meet in the king's garden after breakfast. We can talk then."
Raynell could hardly wait. She left him alone so he could rest and become refreshed. Chapter 12. The Royal Decree. It wasn't long before Raynell and Wesley were sitting in the garden, sharing their stories. The mid-morning sun shone down upon them in the beautiful garden of the king. Raynell told Wesley all about her crown and what she was learning from Messenger. "I have learned the song that Messenger sings over me."
"That is a good song,"
said Wesley.
"Would you like to hear my song, too?"
"Oh, yes," said Raynell. Wesley sang the song Messenger taught him. His voice was sweet and high. The words to the song were different from Raynell's, yet somehow very much the same.
"You see,"
said Wesley,
"we are both very precious to the king."
They shared a smile, and then Raynell asked him, "Wesley, where have you been?"
"I have been on one of my journeys,"
he said. "One of your journeys? Where do you go?" she asked with growing curiosity.
"Oh, I go to a different place every time, wherever Messenger tells me to go."
Wesley stretched his hands out to the east and the west. "When you came to my land of slavery, were you on a journey?" she asked.
"Yes,"
he answered. "And Messenger told you to come to my land?" she asked. Wesley nodded. Then Raynell looked around and blinked her eyes in surprise. "Messenger has never told me to go anywhere. I wonder why. But I'm happy staying here." She looked at the peaceful garden. "I love to be in the palace of the king. Don't you miss it when you are gone?" Wesley's fuzzy beard moved up and down as he talked.
"I miss sitting around the table with my brothers and sisters, yes. I miss walking in this peaceful garden and gazing at the lovely flowers. I do like the safety and comfort of this palace. And my bed is so soft."
"Oh," said Raynell. "Mine too." Then she told Wesley how she jumped on it the night she first came to the palace. Wesley laughed so hard, he fell backward off the bench they were sitting on. His feet went straight in the air. Raynell giggled. "You have the most beautiful feet. I wish I had feet like yours." Wesley wiggled his toes and made Raynell's laughter ring across the garden. After she helped him sit back up, Wesley stretched out his feet and looked at them.
"You will have beautiful feet like mine, too. And very soon, I think."
Raynell's eyes sparkled with the thought. "Wesley," she asked, eager to learn more, "when did you begin your first journey?" Wesley looked off in the distance.
"After I heard the royal decree, I asked to be sent."
The royal decree? Raynell couldn't remember hearing of it. "Perhaps that is why I see so many of my brothers and sisters coming in and out of the palace," she thought. "Perhaps they, too, have asked to be sent." Wesley and Raynell enjoyed their morning together. When the sun was getting higher in the sky, the prince came into the garden, and Wesley stood in his presence. "Hello, Joa," said Raynell.
"Good morning, little sister,"
he said. Raynell watched Joa and Wesley as they greeted one another. They each put a hand on the other's shoulder. It seemed that many words were about to pass between them. But Joa only said 2.
"Thank you."
At the sound of his voice, Wesley's chin trembled, and silent tears began to spill. What is happening here? Raynell wondered. It was all so very strange. She quietly left them alone, hoping that someday it would make sense. Chapter 13. Compassion. After the morning spent with Wesley, restlessness came over Raynell. Wesley had mentioned the royal decree, but Raynell could not imagine ever asking to be sent away from the palace of the king. Yet, she wondered if she was missing something important. "I wear my crown," she thought to herself. I believe I am loved and precious. Why then do I feel so restless? What is wrong with me?" The more Raynell felt the restlessness, the more time she began to spend alone in her favorite balcony. Messenger would come near Raynell and wait to see if she would ask him something. For just a few moments, she would feel almost complete as she gazed upon the faraway lands. "I do not even know what to ask," thought Raynell. Sometimes Raynell wished she could see farther. The lands compelled her in a way she did not understand. Raynell learned to sketch them and to create maps. She would place these maps in her bedroom so she could fall asleep looking at them in the moonlight. One day, Messenger watched Raynell's eyes as they searched the horizon. He studied her closely and knew that her heart's desire was growing, and the time for her to hear the royal decree was very near. He left her side and went to find the son of the king. Joa quietly came to Raynell's side in her very favorite balcony. She wasn't crying, was not upset, but was looking across the distant lands. Raynell felt a stirring in her heart, like something was about to happen in her life that would change her forever. The restlessness was almost unbearable. Raynell turned to Joa and saw that he was looking in the distance too. Then, a stillness came over her. A peace filled her mind. "Whatever it is that I feel, Joa understands." Raynell asked him, "What do you see?" "I see people," he said. Raynell hadn't thought of that. She looked back to the horizon. She could not see what he saw, but she wanted to. Raynell looked up into Joa's face as he continued to gaze at the faraway lands. "I see people that were just like you," he said. "I paid for their freedom. I died for them. I came back to life." Then he whispered, "But many do not know it." A single tear slipped down his cheek. Raynell reached up and let the tear roll into her small hand. When she felt the tear upon her skin, her heart began to beat in a different way. There was a new feeling inside Raynell that began to spread over her heart, down her arms, through her legs, and out her toes. "What is this feeling?" she asked. "It's compassion," said Joa as he turned to her. "With it you will see people like I do. You will love them like I do." Raynell could feel tears on her face. With Joa's tears still in her hand, Raynell turned to the horizon. Chapter 14. Send me, Papa. Faraway lands became close, closer than she could ever dream they would be. Now Raynell could see desert places, dangerous mountains, and rolling hills with trees that grew as tall as the clouds. Then in these lands, Raynell began to see people. Some were slaves like she had been. Some were sick and dying. Many were believing lies and living in fear. "Have these people ever heard the true words?" she asked. "Very few," Joa answered. "Oh!" exclaimed Raynell, as the pressure of compassion seemed to grow. How Raynell wished this emotion would go away. It was almost more than she could take. "I must speak to my papa. I need to tell him all that is in my heart." "I'm here, child," said the king. Raynell turned to see him standing in the doorway of her favorite balcony. "Oh, Papa," began Raynell. Her hand was pressed over her heart. "I have been restless, desiring to see other lands. Now I see the people in these lands have never heard the true words. They do not know they are loved. I hold the tear of your son in my hand, and now I am full of compassion. What do I do with it?" The king spoke.
"You are ready, little daughter, to hear the royal decree."
Messenger came at that moment and opened a scroll. He read,
"It is the royal decree that the children of the king are to go into all lands, sharing the true words to all people, and leading them into the palace of the king, that he may adopt them as his own children."
Raynell held her breath. Could it be that the very thing she desired, she was decreed to do? All the maps she had made, all the times she had gazed upon them in the moonlight. My heart's desire would come true, she thought. The royal decree is that I go to these faraway lands. Then Raynell thought about the peaceful garden she loved to walk in. She thought about her soft, soft bed she loved to sleep upon. She would have to leave all that behind her, just as Wesley had done. The voice of her papa rang out from the balcony.
"Who will go for us?"
With the tear of the sun still in her hand, Raynell knew she would never be the same. With compassion in her heart, how could she say no? Raynell fell down before the king. "Please send me, Papa. I will go. Even though I love being in the palace, I will go. I want to go. I cannot stay."
"I am so pleased with your answer," he said. "Not all my children will go as far away as you, my child. But I put the desire in your heart for other lands to give you great joy, and you will be strengthened for the journey."
Joa took Raynell's hands and stood her on her feet. Being so close to him caused compassion to beat in her heart again. She rested her forehead upon his chest as the pressure of love filled her heart like a fountain of water. "I can hear your heartbeat," she whispered through the pain.
"It will make you stronger as you listen," said Joa.
When Raynell lifted her head, she did feel stronger. "I'm going to the lands beyond the lands." Raynell sighed and turned to her papa. "I will leave the comfort and safety of the palace. Others must hear the true words." When these words left her mouth, Raynell noticed a tingling of joy in her feet. "Oh, my feet feel funny," she exclaimed. She looked down and wondered what it meant. Messenger chuckled and said,
"The feet of those who bring true words to others become beautiful."
He looked at Joa and her papa.
"It won't be long now, will it?"
Raynell thought of Wesley's feet. No wonder she always thought they were beautiful. He was bringing true words to the faraway lands. The king placed his gentle hand upon Raynell's head.
"First you will be prepared, and when you hear Messenger call you, you will know it is time."
Raynell felt peace wash over her at these words. It was like sitting on a riverbank, letting the flowing water pour over her body. Chapter 15. Walking with Joa. That night, as Raynell gazed upon her maps in the moonlight, she whispered, "I'm going. I don't know when, and I don't know where, but I'm going." Her feet tingled with joy, and she giggled. In the morning, Raynell went to the garden to see if Messenger had some true words to teach her. He was there, sitting on a stone bench. Raynell saw many scrolls laid out for her, and with excitement she began to read. It was quiet and peaceful. The morning mist was still heavy upon the flowers, and Joa walked by humming a melody Raynell had never heard before. She watched him and remembered how his tear felt in her hand. A great longing to be near Joa filled her heart. Raynell turned to Messenger with questions in her eyes. Messenger said, "Why don't you walk with Joa for a while?" "But Messenger," Raynell asked, "what about all the true words I should read? Shouldn't I read them to be prepared for my journey?" Messenger smiled. "Yes, they are important." Then he looked at Joa, who was walking toward the fruit trees. "But sometimes the best preparation is just being near Joa." Raynell was glad, for her heart longed to be near Joa more than anything in that moment. She stood and walked over to him. He was still humming a new song. She shyly began to walk with him and matched his pace. After a while, she began humming in harmony to his song. Many mornings Raynell would read the true words that Messenger would lay out for her. She was learning so much. More and more, Raynell could not think about the blessings of being adopted without longing for others in faraway lands to be adopted as well. Raynell was changing. But what changed her more than anything were the hours she spent walking with Joa. She found that she did not know her brother so well until she held his tear in her hand. Soon she lost her shyness when he would walk by her in the garden. Raynell would quickly rise up and slip her hand into his. One day, when Raynell reached out to hold his hand, she felt the scars that she had seen so long ago. "Tell me," she said, "about your scars, Joa." "They help me remember," he said. "Remember what?" asked Raynell. Joa put his fingers over the scars and felt them. "Not what," he said, "but who." Raynell heard the silence of the garden. Every bird seemed to be listening. "Who do you remember, Joa?" He answered as he gazed upon his scars. "Those that have been adopted." "Like me," she thought with wonder. "And those that have not yet been adopted," he continued. Raynell looked at her own scars. She remembered the heavy chains that were locked around her wrists. She remembered the pain of her slavery, how the chains cut deeply. "I don't think of people when I see my scars, Joa," Raynell said as she looked up at him. "Can you change me?" Joa gently held Raynell's wrists and covered her scars. Raynell let her small fingertips rest upon his scars. As she looked deep into Joa's eyes, a memory came to Raynell that made her smile in delight. It was the sound her chains made when they fell off. "Joa!" she exclaimed. "I remember more than the pain. I remember what it sounded like when my chains fell off and sank into the mud." Raynell was giggling. Joa laughed with joy. "Now, what do your scars help you to remember?" A bird was singing nearby. "Freedom," Raynell breathed with a smile. "Freedom for me, and freedom for others." Chapter 16. A Little Boat. One day, Raynell went up to her favorite balcony. As she gazed out over the faraway lands, Raynell wondered when Messenger would call her to leave this house. "I must be patient," she told herself. Suddenly, her ears heard a familiar and beautiful voice call her name. "It's Messenger," she thought. "It must be time." Down the marble staircase she ran. Out the palace doors she skipped. Messenger's voice was joyful and strong. Where was he? She listened. Raynell ran behind the palace to where a gentle river flowed. There stood Messenger, beside a small boat at the foot of a stone bridge. "Is it time?" Raynell asked breathlessly.
"Yes, it is time."
Messenger almost laughed.
"This is your boat. I will show you when to stop and when to move on. But for now, all you need to know is that it's time to get in the boat."
Raynell clasped her hands together and giggled. She felt a deep joy that was just as strong as the love of compassion. It was a wonderful thing to bring the true words to others. The good king and Joa were standing before her, ready to push her boat into the water. "Oh, Papa," she said, "thank you for sending me to the faraway lands." The king smiled and said,
"Perhaps soon you will be leading another child home so she can be adopted."
"Nothing would give me greater joy," exclaimed Raynell. Joa stepped near Raynell, and as she had seen him do in the garden with Wesley, he placed his scarred hand upon her shoulder. With a burning love in his eyes, Joa said 2 words.
"Thank you."
In that moment, Raynell knew he was thanking her for leaving the comfort of the king's palace to bring the true words to faraway lands. Raynell felt overwhelmed, and tears of humility made a trail down her cheeks. Wesley came strolling over the bridge, whistling and barefoot. "Wesley!" Raynell smiled, and with a wink, he helped her into the boat. She looked up at him. "Thank you for leaving the comfort of the king's palace to bring the true words to me. I'm so glad you did, Wesley."
"I would do it all over again," he said. "Goodbye for now."
He smiled and wiggled his toes. Then he raised his eyebrows.
"Perhaps on some of our journeys we will be together."
Raynell's boat slid into the water's current. Some of her brothers and sisters came along the riverbank or stood on the bridge to wave goodbye. Suddenly, Wesley pointed out to them, "Look, Raynell's feet have become beautiful." Raynell looked down and gasped. It really happened, she thought with a smile. I have beautiful feet. Then she wiggled her toes. The end.